Hello. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on the road from Indianapolis. Hope everybody's still enjoying themselves after what was an absolute dominating performance by the Tennessee Titans at Lucas Oil Stadium. Today, we are going to talk about the one clear and obvious difference between these two teams. I thought it was substantial. I thought it was drastic. I thought it was completely and utterly telling that the Titans won the way that they did against this particular Colts team. We're going to talk about what led to Derrick Henry having such a massive performance. That one clear and obvious difference between these two teams that I saw play out at Lucas Oil today. We will get to one player who surprised you, because there were a lot of surprising performances, I think, over the course of today's show. I told you I didn't feel optimistic about how they were going to do. I picked them on Thursday Night Football to win, and of course, the opposite is always so. That's why we don't do game picks around here, because nobody knows what's going to happen over the course of a game. But it was very exciting to watch. You are now in sole possession of the AFC South, and we have a ton to get to over the course of tonight's show. Before we do that, we, of course, have a Tennessee Heating and Cooling heat check as well that we will get to at the end of the program. In the meantime, I need you to share the show around, if you would be so kind, on Facebook Live, on YouTube, on Periscope, on Twitch TV. We love to see the people. We love to share this show. Bottom right-hand corner of your screen, if you would be so kind, if you view with us on Periscope, to retweet this program. I have just done so on my Twitter platform as well. Retweet the show in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Hello to our friends on YouTube and on Twitch TV. Tell your friends that we're hanging out, that we're talking shop here on a Sunday night from Indianapolis. Facebook Live, bottom left-hand corner of your screen. That's where you share. Share now to public. Our friend Zach Bingham would say sharing is caring. It is good to care, and it is good to get a dub at the Colts today. And now that more of you are here, we could start the show officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on a Sunday. I'm your host, Buck Rising, proud as always to be presented to you by Two Rivers Ford, the best in Middle Tennessee car buying experience, the official headquarters, Nashville's official headquarters of the 2021 Ford Bronco. Go online and check them out if you can't go to the dealership in Mount Juliet at tworiversford.com. Tame the Beast is where you go to groom boldly. I don't go anywhere, not Indianapolis, not Baltimore, not Green Bay, not anywhere else in this world without my Tame the Beast products, because you know I got to look good. You know I got to smell right. You can give the gift of better scent this holiday season with the promo code BEAST2020 at getbeast.com. Of course, Brymak Mechanical, B-R-Y-M-A-K, Brymak.com. It's very cold here in Indy. And if I was at home and if the temperatures are dropping at home in Nashville, Tennessee, you could be sure that my heating and cooling units would be functioning properly, courtesy of Brymak Mechanical and the Ashton Real Estate Group of Remax Advantage, who sold me my home that I'm going to come back to tomorrow morning in scenic Nashville, Tennessee. GaryAshton.com, the official real estate agent of your victorious Tennessee Titans. Okay, so the game started out, and not to recap the entire thing, because you guys obviously watched it. I'm going to go back and watch it once more tonight before I hit the road tomorrow morning, and before we talk to Mike Vrabel after he's had the opportunity to watch the film. But this was a very up in the air game for about 2 quarters. And then in the second, after the 2-minute warning and into the second half, this was all Titans all the time. They started to bother Phillip Rivers. Anthony Costanzo got ruled out. The left tackle for the Colts got ruled out in the first half, which caused Rivers to be hugely distressed over the course of that game. That worked in the favor of the defense and the offensive line for the Titans. On their third left tackle, David Quessenberry, Nate Davis, Roger Saffold, Ben Jones, Dennis Kelly, they kicked ass today. It was incredibly, I don't know what I expected, but I did not expect that, because the press box view in Indianapolis were way the hell up there, way above everybody else, way beyond the suite level. It makes me miss Nissan Stadium. It also gives me a good deal of vertigo for how high up we are. But the one advantage of this press box here in Indy is that you can see the play development from basically over the top in a way that I think helps you understand a little more about what's happening in real time schematically. And the holes that this offensive line was clearing for Derrick Henry were absolutely unbelievable. I haven't seen anything like that all year long, and it's a huge credit to the guys up front. We're going to talk about the clear and obvious difference between the Titans and the Colts and what led to it being a fantastic day for Derrick Henry here in just a second. But first, in one word, your Two Rivers Ford take, I want you to give me one word to describe this ass kicking that the Titans handed the Colts today. You guys love when you get the opportunity to beat the Colts. It hasn't happened that often over the course of the history of these two franchises' rivalries. And yet today, you absolutely handed them L after L after L after L, and it had to feel so good because I don't think you've blown a team out like that all year long. I want you to give me one word, your Two Rivers Ford take, to describe this ass kicking, and maybe that's your word here on A to Z Sports Primetime. We'll talk about it together over the course of the program. Domination TN Titan 7 says on Periscope, J.A. Bernal goes with shocked. Man, Henry looked fast to the line and hitting the hole really quick, but the hole was you could drive a car through the lanes that the offensive line was clearing in front of Derrick Henry. It turns out Derrick Henry is actually the size of a small sedan, so it worked out quite well. But the holes that the offensive line were clearing, yes, Derrick Henry had to execute. Yes, Derrick Henry was good today, but he was made to look incredibly effective because of what was happening in front of him. Reckoning, says T. Douglas on Periscope. Carrie Romero, who was at the game with her family, says phenomenal. She was thrilled with the way that it went down. Blew out Buffalo like that. That's right, Micah. But I still don't think it was quite maybe the margin of victory. I think it was 26 points, the final margin of victory that you beat Buffalo by after coming off the Rona. But oh my God, I think this one on maybe the Buffalo win, the Buffalo blowout stands out a little more because of all the things that you had to go through to get to that point, and the Rona and the way that the entire league was scorning the Titans, and everybody hates the Titans behind the scenes, and they should be banished from the league, and $10 million fine from Mike Florio, apparently, that never happened, and now nobody's talking about anything of the sort for the Ravens or the Steelers or everybody at the Colts who were dealing with COVID, all of these things. So maybe the Buffalo one means a little bit more, but I don't know. This is a pretty big one that happened today, and it was for the lead in the AFC South in a way that was quite shocking to me. Annihilation, Ronnie Sneed says on Facebook. Brutal. I was dozing off in the fourth quarter, Ty Waller says, but that was a good thing. Yeah, that game dragged on at the end, man. Blowouts always do, right? Because the other team's throwing the ball, there's incompletions, the clock stops a bunch. That game could have ended much sooner than it actually did. But continue to give me your one word to describe this blowout victory today. I'll give you mine here in just a second, right after I tell you about our friends at Two Rivers Ford. Their holiday, built for the holiday clearance event. It's happening right now at the dealership in Mount Juliet, or online if that's where you choose to go through the entire car purchasing process, which you can do at tworiversford.com. You can save a ton of money. You always save a ton of money when you shop at Two Rivers Ford, but you can get an especially good deal on your new or pre-owned vehicle, available now at the dealership or at tworiversford.com. Quessenberry is Texas Sports 1015. That's his one word. David Quessenberry, and we'll talk about him later on in the show, because I'm going to designate almost an entire segment to David Quessenberry, because I got a call from somebody in the Titans organization. When did that happen? That happened about an hour ago. I got a call. I'm laying down in bed. It's my 1 hour to take a breather, because we grind it out on game days, and it's a lot of fun. Obviously, I love my job, and I would not dare to complain about the thing that I get to do for a living and that I get paid to do, to travel all over the place to go watch professional football and this, that, and the other. But I got a call from somebody in the Titans organization about an hour ago, and essentially what was said to me was David Quessenberry was the most impressive player on the field today. Quessenberry is an excellent story for a great many reasons, for what he's been able to overcome. A cancer survivor, like our great intern Reed, also a fellow cancer survivor. Incredibly impressive individuals, both of them. Today on the field, though, Quessenberry absolutely kicked ass. I mean, for not one single solitary moment did I think, man, they got their third string left tackle out there trying to defend or trying to pass protect against the Indianapolis Colts, what to this point has been one of the best defenses in the sport. Now, obviously, they were without a lot of guys today, but that is not to diminish. You can only block the dudes in front of you, is what Mike Vrabel said. And David Quessenberry did not for one single solitary moment hesitate with the task that was in front of him. I was incredibly impressed with David Quessenberry for me today. But what I will tell you is my one word to describe the Titans of the Colts is telling. I think this was a very, very telling victory for the Titans today. And I'll explain a little more what I mean. Telling is the word that I would choose to describe this particular game. Tig says he ain't tired yet. We ain't tired yet talking about the Titans. I'm not tired yet, and we are not tired yet because we have a lot more show to do. But telling is the word for me, because what I watched today were two similar case studies in what exactly these two teams have gone through. Because I think from a talent perspective, like when all things are right, I think these are very similar teams between the Titans and the Colts. I think there's a clear and obvious difference between the Titans and the Colts. And I know the Raiders got blown out by the Falcons today, which maybe that doesn't happen to the Titans or the Colts, because the Falcons are a terrible team in Las Vegas. I didn't get to see a lot of that game, but I saw the final score, and that was unbelievable. But I think there's a difference between where the Titans and Colts are at and where like Pittsburgh and Kansas City is at, right at the top of the heap. But these two teams very similar. But what's telling to me is how much better coached the depth players behind the Titans' star frontline starters, because you're missing a lot of them. Remember, no Clowney, no Humphreys, no Lawan, no Adoree Jackson for 12 weeks at this point. So maybe you're not thinking about Adoree Jackson, but a lot of these top line players for the Tennessee Titans over the course of the season, you've lost a lot. And this happens to every football team, right? Everybody gets injured. We always hear that there's 100% chance of injury, but like Lewis Chesney brings up Tier Tart, who is an undrafted rookie free agent playing along the defensive line, who made some seriously good plays on the goal line today. What I looked at today was two very, very differently coached teams in the aspect of the depth players for the Titans. Next man up is a cliche that you hear all the time, but they really, really do mean it when they say it here. And I'm watching the Colts, who have lost a lot of guys, a lot of good players, a lot of top-line players coming into this game due to COVID, right? Ryan Kelly is not available, the starting center for the Indianapolis Colts. DeForest Buckner, their great defensive lineman. Nico Autry. You had several players for the Indianapolis Colts, and like everybody's losing players right now from COVID, from injury, for whatever reason, right? The Broncos played a game without a quarterback today. A wide receiver playing quarterback in a way that looked like the football at the very inception of football, a very, very different time in the era of football. But regardless, there's a substantial difference between how well coached, and how much better the Titans' depth players behind these frontline starters, where you're down to your third string left tackle, and you don't even notice that dude out there today. Maybe because he's not playing DeForest Buckner, and DeForest Buckner's a much harder person to block, but also because they are executing at a high level, because it really, really is. Arthur Smith tells us this all the time when we talk to him. We talk to Art on Thursdays on a normal basis, and what he says to us anytime there's an injury, when we're talking about Humphreys, when we're talking about Lawan, whomever, he's like, Mike tells me who's up for the game. I coach them that specific way. We're going to coach whoever they tell us is up for that game. We're going to expect them to execute, even if it's Jamil Douglas with a direct snap to Derrick Henry in Baltimore after the first play that Ben Jones goes down. And so you see games like today, and you think, okay, Jamil Douglas, that was obviously a very, very bad play going back to last Sunday. But everywhere else where they do practice those things, those Jamil Douglas instances, not necessarily to single out Jamil Douglas, because it's not all his fault. It's, you got to, balls to call a play like that in that particular situation. But there are fewer instances that you can cite like Jamil Douglas, as opposed to how often you see guys like Will Compton, who didn't play great on the first series and is probably going to keep him up tonight. But also, I think, settled down over the course of that game after they pulled him for David Long. And David Long played great. David Long played spectacularly. David Long, whose brother, and I don't know how much of this is out there because I know he was asked about it today, and we got some quotes from him about it, but David Long lost his brother in a shooting the same week that Corey Davis lost his brother. coming into to a couple weeks ago, coming into that Indianapolis game. And nobody really talked about it. But David Long has been seeing some seriously difficult, trying times right now through the course of losing his brother to gun violence, to the course of seeing Jayon Brown go down, Will Compton filling in, and Will Compton, not necessarily in this game in particular, but Will Compton on the whole playing okay as a backup to Jayon Brown, seeing that guy be placed in front of you, knowing that you're in the coach's doghouse because you've made errors on special teams that every player has to go through, and that's, they break them down to build them back up the way that Mike Vrabel does. That's a very, very Vrabel thing that goes on, but, it's not for everybody. I remember we talked to Jayon Brown about this earlier in the year. He goes, you can't take what Mike Vrabel says to you personally, because sometimes it'll really, really cut you based on the way that they try and coach up these players. But like David Long, Quessenberry, the list goes on and on. Breon Borders getting his first career interception today. They were very, very impressive. And I think telling is the word for me here on A to Z Sports Prime Time, talking about, Titan 8251 points out Gostkowski for the second game in a row. You don't even notice. How nice is it? How nice is it to not notice the punter and the kicker? Those are not things that are costing you games at this point in the season. It helps that they were playing indoors today, but you take little victories where you can get them. Today was an exceptionally telling day for the depth pieces on this Titans team. We'll get to more of your comments here in just a second. Here on A to Z Sports Prime Time, I want you to continue to tell me your one word to describe this Titans victory, this Titans blowout of the Indianapolis Colts. And honestly, it wasn't even as close as the final score would indicate it is, because it was prevent defense at the end. It was garbage time touchdowns to T.Y. Hilton and Jacoby Brissett after that game was well in hand. A.J. Brown, by the way, I don't think I've ever seen a 42-yard touchdown on an onside kick. In what world? In what world does that happen except for this bizarro Titans team and to come up here to Indianapolis? Because the Colts have owned you both in Indianapolis and in Nashville. It hasn't been much discrimination as to where they play you and how badly they beat you in many, many of these previous series together. But I look at this and I say, my God, is this a totally different series? Two totally different teams at this point in their trajectories, in their lifetimes. Continue to give me your one word to describe this Titans victory over the Colts. We will discuss it at length right after I remind you about our friends at the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage, the official real estate agency of the 8-3 through 12 weeks, 8-3 Tennessee Titans, kicking ass. So does the official real estate agent of the Tennessee Titans. That's the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage, who sold me my home, who helped me find my dream address without the stress, who not only will get you the best home for your needs, but will hook you up with the option to sell for more, because they got all kinds of buyers coming in from places like Indiana. Indiana is a terrible place to live. I love where I went to college. I love my family here. Indiana, terrible place to live. Everybody from Indiana wants to live in Nashville, Tennessee, and if they tell you otherwise, they're lying. Gary has all of these buyers coming in from every other state that are moving to Nashville because Nashville's the best place in the world. They will help you sell your home for more, so you can get one over on the Colts fans, not just once but twice if they're moving to Nashville. Check them out at the official real estate agent of the Tennessee Titans, GaryAshton.com. The state sucks, says Tyler Shedrin. Go Hoosiers. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Road Warriors, says Lewis Chesney. Indeed, they continue to be hugely impressive on the road. Derrick Henry, this was a stat tweeted out by our friend Diana Rossini, who I'm gonna text Diana after we wrap up here now that I'm thinking about it, and see if she won't do a pod at some point this week, because she was here covering the game for ESPN. But I would tell you that Derrick Henry, a stat that she tweeted out today, Derrick Henry, this is his 8th straight game on the road where he has eclipsed 100 rushing yards. And I know I tell you that the rushing yards don't matter. The rushing yards don't matter. Rushing yards are lovely things to put in a box score. But today, when you're getting blocks like you were today, where on that first drive, he had 42 yards and a touchdown on the opening drive of the game. He was absolutely plowing through this COVID Colts depleted defense, and maybe they're depleted, but also that offensive line bullied the bullied the Indianapolis Colts today. And it was reported that the Titans staff showed the players clips of that last game against Indianapolis, how they kind of got pushed around in that game, how there was not a lot of Not a lot of pressure on Phillip Rivers. How the offensive line for the Colts, which has always been good, or at least in the last couple of years, has been very, very good. How they kind of handled the Titans on Thursday Night Football, that was not the case today. That was not even remotely the case today. And on the opposite side of the ball, the Tennessee Titans offensive line went out there and knocked dudes in the mouth. David Quessenberry, we'll talk about him later. Fantastic. 8 straight road games with 100 yards rushing for Derrick Henry. I believe he finished with 3 touchdowns, if I remember correctly. I'll pull that box score up just to make sure. I forgot to grab a game book on the way out of Lucas Oil. Yeah, 3 touchdowns, 178 yards on 27 carries. He was averaging 6.6 yards per attempt. Derrick Henry absolutely blowing by dudes, and it's because that Titans offensive line was blowing guys off the ball. Ronnie Sneed, we need that Sharp refund, says Robert Lehue. Talking about Sharp, what do you mean Sharp? Let the MVP chatter begin, says Corey D. Jackson. That's been going on for a while. A.J. Brown was talking about it again today. Austin City said 212. Maybe he had 212 scrimmage yards. I agree. I was born and raised in Indiana and couldn't wait to move here, says Karen O'Keefe. Not to mention that our defensive line is looking stronger with Clowney on the bench, says Titans for Life. You know what? I don't know, because we'll talk about surprising performances. Oh, the Clowney refund. You guys want the Clowney refund. Only Barry Sanders from our buddy Teron Davenport of ESPN.com. Only Barry Sanders with 10 has more consecutive road games with 100-plus yards on the ground. A very helpful stat from our guy TD live producing out here making me look smart, Teron, with the stats in the comment section on Periscope. Shout out the OG TD. Good to see our defense attack and not sit back, says Joe Cardoza. But the thing with the Clowney, we'll talk about Clowney here in a second, because I do think it's something that you guys like to say, and there are games when they have looked better without Jadeveon Clowney, and I think there's reasons for that. I don't think they're a better defense without Clowney. Let me say that up front. But we'll talk about that more in just a second, because I want to know from you guys. I want you to tell me which Titans player surprised you the most with their performance today. Because we talked about David Quessenberry, talked about Breon Borders. Nate Davis was a bad man. On that A.J. Brown touchdown, Dan Orlovsky of ESPN broke it down. Teron's teammate broke it down on Twitter, and I retweeted that, so you can go watch it after the show. Am I still in the press box? No, I'm in my hotel room. I had the press box. The press box in Indy makes me nauseous. It's way too high up. It makes it's great for watching the actual schematics of a football game break out, because it's kind of like watching the game film, because you're literally on top of the play. But I couldn't sit in that press box any longer. It makes me physically ill. I'm not great with heights, and it's way the hell up there here on A to Z Sports Prime Time. Stacy wants to know, how was the pie? The pie was great. But let me know who surprised you. One particular player that surprised you here on A to Z Sports Prime Time. That surprised you in the Titans' victory today. Let me know on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitch TV. We are all over the place here on the Primetime Show, and we would like your participation. Give me one player by name who surprised, or maybe if you want to say position group, because the whole offensive line kicked ass, and the secondary I thought was a lot better today, even though Kevin Byard had a touchdown caught on his head by Trey Burton, which I think was a good catch by Burton, but also not well defended by Kevin Byard, which is a weird thing, and we'll talk about that later, because I think that's becoming a thing in a way that is problematic. You guys give me your one player. I will tell you about the people that keep me grooming boldly, that keep me smelling good, that makes my hair look this good, that makes my skin glow like this. Even though the lighting is not great here in my hotel room, you can still tell that I groom boldly and that I smell good, even through the thing. You can't smell me, but I smell good. You know I smell good. Look at me. It's clear that I smell good. GetBeast.com, promo code BEAST2020. That's how you save 20% off your online order, courtesy of our friends at Tame the Beast. They have holiday Beast boxes, customized in a variety of different ways. You can customize your own, and you can give the gift of better scent to your loved ones this holiday season. It's not just for men. It's for beasts of all kinds. The ladies love the Beast body lotion, the Beast Yawp hand wash. It's great. My girlfriend cannot get enough of this stuff. GetBeast.com. Save yourself 20% off this holiday season on Beast boxes or otherwise with that promo code BEAST2020, courtesy of our friends at Tame the Beast. So let's see. Who surprised you today? Blossing game, says Derek Kine. He did have a nice reception. I think it was for 16 or 17 yards. Blossing game, Oops, sorry, my alarm's going off. Blossingame is an interesting case study because he does a lot for you, and fullbacks you don't normally notice, but he's always reliable as a receiver. When you use him out of the backfield like that, he opens up clear lanes for Derrick Henry. I think he's more. Honestly think he's more of a skill position player than he is like a true natural like down and dirty fullback. But you don't necessarily have to be, and he does spring Derrick Henry for blocks quite often. But you can use him as a versatile piece, and so Blossingame is an interesting one, Derek Kine. And I did not expect you to go there, but he is an important part of this offense, and I think that does matter. Jeff Swaim from Houston Smith, a lot of surprising targets. Jonnu Smith, a blocking tight end, and Jeff Swaim, a chain mover. Nobody expected that today. He had a couple of catches. And Jonnu Smith, by the way, just absolutely blowing dudes off the ball. He was a big part of the running success today, too. Quessenberry, says Karen O'Keefe. Tier Tart, says Jeff Sawyer. We talked about Tart, the undrafted rookie free agent defensive lineman. He is what you hope guys like Mac Dickerson or Isaiah Mack would turn out to be. Guys that can actually play. He's shown up a couple times on film. You noticed him a lot on the goal line today. It's not like they use a lot of down defensive linemen, but Tier Tart absolutely stepped up. And it's not, I've seen enough of him at this point that I don't necessarily know if I'm surprised by it, but I do think, you know what, I will say I'm surprised by it because you don't expect undrafted rookies to be able to contribute like that, but when you find those guys, makes all the difference in the world. And Tier Tart, maybe not a true blue difference maker, but he's a good depth piece, especially without Laurel Murchison, and I expect that you will see more of Tier Tart even after Laurel Murchison returns. 98 says Sean Drell. He is surprised by Jeff Simmons. I'm not surprised by anything that Jeff Simmons does anymore. Jeff Simmons is a fantastic football player. He is an exceptional football player. Today he was fantastic. He was rubbing his belly after sacks because Thanksgiving and everybody's full. He's hungry for them and he's feasting on Phillip Rivers in the backfield. Jeff Simmons, not surprising to me, but you like to see it. It's a nice thing to have. It's a great thing to have. He's a top line. He's a top of the line. He's a best in class defensive tackle, and one that I think will be a very special piece for this defense. Not necessarily surprising because he's going to bring it every game, but a good player continuing to string together consecutive games with a great amount of impact and success. Kern surprised me, says Wes. Glad to have him back. I'm not, again, Brett Kern's like one of the best players on the team. If he's not, he might, at what he does, Brett Kern might be the best player on the Tennessee Titans. And Derrick Henry's great, and Ryan Tannehill's great, and AJ Brown's great, but Brett Kern to come off, so it's not just a bum wrist that he's got. I happen to know, and I'm comfortable reporting that it's not just a wrist that Brett Kern injured, but he was also dealing with some elbow stuff too, and continuing to deal with it with not necessarily, he's still a little fragile at this point, but he's out there drilling punts, and they didn't even need to punt early on, but once he started to get work, once the game got away from the Colts and the offense got a little more clock killing, and you're seeing a lot more running game and Deontay Foreman and Jeremy McNichols, and you're not necessarily converting first downs. Brett Kern out there, weapon, big gun, leg, all of it. I mean, and just regularly kicking them inside the 20 as if he didn't miss a day. And maybe he's like that because I know for a fact that he doesn't stretch. So he's just a god. I mean, I know he works really hard at what he does, but also he's just a blessed with gifts from the punter gods. Brett Kern is a special teams god. So I don't know if I'm surprised by it, but my God, it must be nice for you guys who have lived such a stressful life on special teams here in the last, through the last 12 weeks to have Steven Gostkowski not be a problem today and to have the punting not be a problem today. In fact, to have the punting be an advantage where they're regularly pinning my beloved Phillip Rivers inside the 20-yard line. Ryan Elaine says Hooker should be starting, talking about Amani Hooker. Starting is such a relative term, right? Starting doesn't necessarily mean that you should be in that position the entire game, right? The starters whoever walks out on the field for the first defensive snap, they're considered starters for that game. Now, he does start. He is their starting third safety in their 3-safety unit, and he makes good plays. He doesn't necessarily move all that well, but he's always in the right spot, which I think, eases the burden of what he may not be athletically. It's not like he's a bad athlete, but he's not necessarily overwhelmingly athletic, but he's a smart player, and he's always in the right spot to be able to make these kind of plays. And then Breon Borders, you could be surprised, but Breon Borders is an excellent nominee. But Hooker does kind of sort of start in your 3-safety look. I wouldn't take Kevin, even for his bat. Kevin Byard has not been good. He's been, I'll tell you what, he's been fine, but like fine in the sense of like the meme where it's the dog sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and the eyes are really wide and there's no life in the pupils and the fire is burning around him. Kevin Byard's been fine, like everything is fine in that sense, where he's an average safety at this point in his, in his 4th year, 5th year? And the decline or the drop-off, we won't call it a decline, but the drop-off from what Kevin Byard has been historically to what we're seeing now, where Trey Burton is catching touchdowns on Kevin Byard's head in a way that Kevin Byard does not look like he's defending those plays particularly well. I still wouldn't pull Byard out of the lineup for somebody like Hooker, and it would not be Hooker that you would replace Byard with. Hooker replaces Vaccaro in what they do physically and what their assignments are within the defense. But Kevin Byard, and a little bit of a problem right now. He's getting targeted in a way that you're not used to seeing. Now, the defense got a lot better, and Kevin Byard you did not see those kind of plays being made, and he made some really sound tackles, and you saw him show up in ways that kind of made you forget a little bit about the early touchdown to Burton. But I will say to you that he's a very, very adept player in this defense. What I would say to you is continue to give me your players who surprised you today over the course of this show. How did Compton do, says Miles McEwen? Not well. I would not say that Will Compton played a good game. I would say that it's a complete performance by the team in its entirety, right? Where the offense is playing well, the defense after the first couple drives really settled in. Even as it got late into the game and Rivers is throwing all over them because it's garbage time and he's just trying to keep up. But Will Compton got pulled as the starter, as the defensive signal caller in that first series. And what I know to be so is they pulled him out and they brought him. They were rotating him and David Long in various series, and David Long was the better player today. On the whole, David Long was the better player. And that first series where honestly, Will Compton looked lost on that first series, and he knows that, and that's not something I wouldn't say to his face. And as much love as I have for Will Compton, because I do, it's probably unprofessional how much I do enjoy Will Compton. He was not good today, and that cost you, I think, at various points. Certainly on that opening drive where Rivers marches right down the field, he knew exactly what they wanted to do. He knew exactly what the coverages were, and he marched right down the field. He was 4 or 5 for 56 in that touchdown to Burton. No pressure. Byard was getting targeted. It was not a good series for Will Compton, and that's why you saw David Long come in. And David Long played great after not practice. He came off the COVID list yesterday and did not practice all week. He watched practice on Friday, but they've been trying to keep him away for the team and for the purposes of contact tracing, even though Chris Jackson did get put on the COVID list. So that's an interesting thing to pay attention to, whether that's a close contact or we don't know where that's a close contact from. Sorry. I keep forgetting to turn off my alarm. Here on A to Z Sports Prime Time. Will Compton was not good today, but I do think he settled in a little bit over the course of that game. And so you like that, but you do not like the way that he looked in the first series where Rivers torched him regularly. Nyheim Hines torched him regularly. He looked pretty lost out there. Byard feeling that dad life, says Jordan Miller. Yeah, he's got 2 now, so he's probably getting worn out pretty regularly. I don't know if that's what's caused. I don't know if that's what's causing his decline in his play. Brewer did play. By the way, Isaiah Wilson got snaps on offense today. I don't know if anybody noticed because it was the last 3 plays of the game where it's victory formation. It's Logan Woodside kneeling, but A.J. Brown robbed him of opportunities to play because he recovered that onside kick for a 42-yard touchdown. The Malcolm Butler almost interception where the what do they call it? It's not consecutive possession, but a simultaneous catch between the receiver, I think it was Pascal, that he did rip the ball away from, and they called it an interception initially and then overturned it. But they were trying to get the offense out on the field. The offense came out on the field after they thought it was a Butler interception. Once it was reviewed as a reception, Isaiah Wilson didn't get the play. That call was bad. Who said the call was bad? Where'd the comment go? That call was bad. Butler had the most control, says drop the album 99. No, he didn't. I'm always going to be honest with you guys. That was the right call. The tie possession goes to the receiver, and they both came down with a simultaneous catch. So tie goes to the receiver. That's how it works. So you can't be mad at the call. You can't be mad at the call at all. Joint possession, says Jeb Martin. That's right. Buck Nasty, DeZito, good to see you, brother. Always like when we see DeZito coming in hot. Tannehill tried to throw Brewer the ball down at the goal line, but the Colts didn't fall for it, says Roddy Steed. Yeah, Brewer getting the snaps over Isaiah Wilson in the heavy set. Surprising performances. The offensive line, that's my answer. David Quessenberry shocked me today. He did not give up a sack. He did not really give up many pressures. In fact, I don't know if he gave up a pressure, and he was just absolutely running dudes over in against the Colts defense. And again, we talked about this. The Colts were hurting on defense. They missed a bunch of their good players. You had Bobby Okereke, you had Danico Autry, you had DeForest Buckner, so many different guys who are good players and who do, by the way, make a massive difference if that game is replayed. But the game was not replayed. And David Quessenberry, as the Titans' third left tackle, could only block the people in front of him. And what he did was block the holy hell out of the people in front of him. He absolutely blew dudes off the ball in a way that I told you guys. I got a call from somebody in the organization about an hour and a half ago saying that story of the game. Story of the game, David Quessenberry. Story of the game, David Quessenberry, for what he did. Quessenberry is actually good. He held his own last week versus Ngakoue too, says Tehran. TD, I would agree. And certainly better than Sambrailo, right? I mean, Sambrailo was getting worked by Yannick Ngakoue before he got hurt, unfortunately for him. That did cost him his starting left tackle spot here in Tennessee, where overall I think he was fine. But David Quessenberry, at first when I watched that Ravens game, I'm like, well, he's probably like the Ravens were getting tired at the end of that game. Mike Vrabel talked about it. They were just physically wearing them down on defense, and the Ravens missing some guys last week too that made it a lot easier to wear them down. But Ngakoue is a great player, right? And so I looked at that game with David Quessenberry, and I don't want to say I discounted it, but I kind of looked at it as, okay, this guy's coming in off the bench. He's got fresh legs. This is a fourth quarter injury. The Ravens are already tired. They're at the point where they're running all over them. They're physically dominating the game. Maybe it's because he has fresh legs and the defense for the Ravens are worn out. And then I saw what happened today, and I'm like, no, this dude's like good. This dude's good, even though it's his first start. I think Mike Vrabel said in 7. Let me pull up the quote to be exact, because I think Mike said that's his first NFL start in 7 years. But at this point, I'm reading the quote right now. Making his first start in 6 or 7 years. That was from Mike Vrabel, because I asked him about the offensive line today, and people forget that he almost beat Ben Jones out when they were both in Houston. He almost beat Ben Jones out for the starting guard spot when the Texans were like one of the better teams in the AFC, not just in the AFC South. And they've won many division titles previously under Bill O'Brien. But during that kind of era, David Quessenberry, before he got diagnosed with cancer, that he ultimately had to work his way back from, and now finds himself as the starting left tackle for a playoff-bound team, a division-leading team, as we sit here in Week 12. David Quessenberry, legitimately strong player. I was hugely impressed with that guy today. Quest knows just how to be in the way also. Well, that's kind of the job. 29-yard touchdown run versus the Ravens. He had one of the key blocks, says Tehran. That's right. My boy QAnon holding it down at left tackle, says arguably awesome. No fake news here. No QAnon, no conspiracy theory about David Quessenberry. David Quessenberry, legitimately good at this point here for the Tennessee Titans. Hope he continues it against the Browns. That's going to be a real test, right? Because I don't know if that's like news, but Myles Garrett's going to be back this week. Myles Garrett has missed some time, but he will be back this coming weekend, this coming Sunday against the Browns, and so that will be mainly David Quessenberry's assignment. So we will see just how good David Quessenberry is against elite level players, right? Ngakoue, an elite level player. Myles Garrett's a different kind, right? Maybe Ngakoue is a great player. Myles Garrett is an elite player, and so we will see whether that can translate, whether that can carry over next week from Sunday to Sunday. But so far, David Quessenberry 2 for 2 at left tackle, looking pretty good out there. What about Clowney, says Stacy? We don't know about Clowney. Clowney, I think, would be no, I don't think they can activate him this week. I'll have to double check that for you guys because I know he went on the 3-week IR. Buck Nasty, I think we can let JB go for David Long. Talking about Jayon Brown, I think he's ready to save some cap money. I mean, that's the plan. Mike Vrabel talked about it on Friday. David Long's a big part of what they want to do in the future. David Long is a big part of what they want to do in the future, and I continue to enjoy the way that guy plays football, especially on defense. Maybe he needs work on special teams. You can live with that, right? And if Mike Vrabel wants to make him inactive for a game to teach him a lesson because he blew a couple plays on special teams, fine. But at this point, David Long is the next Jayon Brown. That's what he was drafted to do. That's ultimately what the draft is for, to draft cheaper players who can replace guys who are going to price themselves out, especially this year when we're talking about the flat cap and what COVID's going to do, the salary cap and all those things. Jayon Brown is not a priority for you right now. He's a good player. He's been a good player, been a great player for you. And it's he's obviously very athletically gifted. But David Long can take Jayon Brown's spot in a way that saves you money in the future and also really doesn't drop your linebacker play off all that much. Breon Borders should have had 2 picks today, says somebody on YouTube. That's from Charles Maddox on YouTube. Do you think Malcolm Butler would be willing to take a pay cut next season set to make $14 million? I don't know. But I honestly, I think they might like to keep Malcolm, especially if you don't know what's going on with Adoree. But you also have Desmond King. So I think if it's a choice between Malcolm Butler and extending Desmond King, I think you would probably do the Desmond King deal and look to replace Butler on the outside. I think that's ultimately what you might consider doing with Christian Fulton, because remember you remember what we're talking about there. But at this point, I was very surprised by a lot of these depth players. And again, it comes back to the clear and obvious difference between the Titans and the Colts. The depth players for the Titans are much better coached, much better equipped to play when they are called upon than what you saw from Colts players who were called upon to play and did not live up to expectation. There was a significant drop-off at this point. That's an advantage for him. He's comfortable doing that, and it shows, says Tehran. Indeed, look at the conference he played in college. College always used to playing in space, says Tehran, talking about West Virginia and the Big 12. Has Fulton been active? I haven't seen his name. He has been designated to return. He has not yet been activated. He is not yet available on the active roster. Let's move on to the Tennessee Heating and Cooling Heat Check. TNHCreviews.com, TNHCreviews.com. That's where you go for satisfaction guaranteed on all of your HVAC needs. Who got hot? Who cooled off in sports this weekend? We've seen a full day of NFL. I know the Packers and Bears are playing on Sunday Night Football, and I'll probably catch the second half of that game here in just a minute. But you got to let me know who got hot, who cooled off in sports this week. I feel like there's going to be a lot of Titans answers, and that's okay because they're kicking ass right now, and you should feel good about your team because they are hugely impressive. Give me your answers in the comments on Facebook Live, Periscope, YouTube, and Twitch TV, wherever it is that you get our fine streaming program here this evening. While you guys do that, and before I give you my answers, because I am going to self-incriminate for the cooling off candidate today because I gave some very, very bad advice on the pregame show, and I'm here to cop to that because we're accountable on this show. Meanwhile, I will tell you about our friends who are always accountable when it comes to satisfaction guaranteed on all of your HVAC needs. That's Tennessee Heating and Cooling. Satisfaction guaranteed is what they promise you on heating and cooling units alike, especially because I hear the weather is nasty today in Nashville. I hear that the weather is going to drop down. It's going to get a little more like it was here in Indy. It's very, very cold. Like I said, I love where I went to college. I love Indiana. I hate the weather. I hate the state of Indiana. It's a terrible place. It's very gray. Very rarely do you see the sun. It's kind of like London in that way, except not because it's Indiana. Tennessee Heating and Cooling, TNHCreviews.com. That's where you go one of their 3 locations. They will be able to service you in Middle Tennessee, or some of you who view in Kentucky, TNHCreviews.com. High of 36 tomorrow, says Stacy. Man, I am not excited to go back to that. Not about that. Nate Robinson. Oh, EA says Nate Robinson for the cooling off candidate. I didn't see the Jake Paul-Nate Robinson fight, but I saw what happened on Twitter. And I saw all the memes and the gifs of this man lifeless. Who cooling off, not even Nate Robinson. Nate Robinson's friends, who talked him into getting into that fight, to taking that payday, and I'm sure he's going to get paid, and maybe that's worth it to him, but he looked like he died on the floor, on that ring floor yesterday from everything that I saw on Twitter. I didn't get a chance to see the fight. Nate Robinson not just got cold, got knocked out cold here on A to Z Sports Primetime. Derek Carr cooled off today. Oh, my God, the Raiders. 40 points, 40-plus points by the Falcons. And the Raiders' defense is not good, but oh, my God, the Falcons are terrible. What happened? This is like when I hate the contender-pretender thing, because it's just, it's a lazy thing that we do in sports talk. And, lazy because I can admit to that because I've done it before. And I know that it's an easy way to get a segment done or get a show done. But the Raiders legitimately, because of that defense and because of who they lost to today, good teams don't lose to teams like the Falcons. Good teams don't get blown out like that, the way that the Falcons took it to Las Vegas today, in a way that was clear and obvious to everybody that they are just not, they're not at the caliber of the type. In the same way that we're talking about the Chiefs and the Steelers being better than the Titans and the Colts significantly better than what we saw from the Raiders today. Although you could say that good teams like the Colts, or good teams who we think are good, like the Colts, they don't get blown out like that. And they banged up today, whatever you want to say. They don't get blown out like that. The Titans don't get blown out like that. I think the Titans' biggest margin of defeat this year was to the Colts, and it was by double digits. So that warrants saying, and that you consider that to be a blowout. But not like what we saw today from Indianapolis, and more so not like what we saw from Las Vegas here on the Tennessee TNHCreviews.com heat check. The Tennessee Heating and Cooling heat check here on A to Z Sports Primetime. John, who helping to block, says Puka. Titans got blown out by the Bengals, says Shrike. That's a good point. Maybe I will reconsider my position. Everybody can. I don't know. But at that point, I don't think the Titans were a good team at that point. Right? The defense still sucked. The defense still sinks. Not today it was good. Today it was much better. At that point, the defense sucked. That was the Jonathan Joseph, Vic Beasley defense. That's a totally different defense than what I'm watching right now. Before Desmond King, before you got rid of Vic Beasley, who now is on the practice squad for the Raiders and is double dipping the hell out of his NFL earnings. I would say to you that it's a very, very different team. And listen, a different Colts team, a different Colts defense you played today than the one you played in Thursday Night Football. It's a big difference 2 weeks can make, especially when you're playing during the Rona. Finally challenged wide receivers. That makes it harder to go against the quick passing game. And they're still playing too far off at times, Teron. And you and I and everybody, Paul and all of our Titans media friends, we talked to Anthony Midget about this. He got borderline defensive about it. And so there are going to be moments where you see stuff like that, but you are correct. They are playing a lot closer up to the line of scrimmage in a way that does make a big difference. My Tennessee Heating and Cooling heat check here on the Primetime Show. Here's what I'll say. The Titans, hot as hell. The Titans on fire. The Titans steaming, like lick your finger, steam comes off of it hot, because they are out here burning up people. Not just the Ravens, not just the Colts. I think they are very, very well equipped, because I think Baker Mayfield is not good. I don't think much of Baker Mayfield at all. I think their running game is incredibly diverse and unique, and I think you have to be prepared for that. It's going to be a big Jeffrey Simmons, Daquan Jones game, and if you can continue to get stuff out of T.R. Tart, that's big. But what I would say to you is the Tennessee Titans right now, much, much more like the team that we saw go 5-0 at the start of the season. 2 games is a winning streak. Tennessee Titans stock up based on the performances of the last couple of weeks and the adjustments and the differences in that team that we have seen made. They are my heating up candidate, my cooling off candidate. First one, Raiders. Awful. Terrible bad. But more importantly, cooling off me. Because what I said today, we did the Titan Game Day morning show. Every Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time, Titan Game Day morning. And we do a best bet segment, right? And I don't bet on the Titans games because that would be hugely unprofessional. And in fact, I think that's illegal. And I'm fairly certain that's illegal. It's the same reason that I can't put money on a fantasy football league. Like it's like insider trading on Wall Street or something like that. Even though I picked the Colts. I thought the Colts were going to win today. Got blown out. I thought the Titans were going to win on Thursday Night Football. Got blown out. So what the hell do I know? But I would say to you that I gave out gambling advice today with your money, not my money, to bet the under in Titans Colts today. The under was 50. The over-under was 51.5. The Titans almost cleared the over on their own. It was an absolute, just catastrophic best bet by me today. The Titans under of 51.5 with for minus 110. Horrible gambling advice by me. The Tennessee heating and cooling heat check heating up candidate, the Tennessee Titans. The cooling off candidate, my best bets, because that was trash what I gave you guys today, and I hope I didn't cost anybody money because that's entirely possible. Why didn't the NFL cancel Saints-Broncos game if they didn't have enough players but postpone the Steelers-Ravens? We were talking about this in the press box. There has always been a rule, and fair or unfair, like there's always been a rule in the NFL that they don't care about position groups. Like if it's 3 guys for the Broncos, the quarterbacks for the Broncos, that's not an outbreak. 20 players for the Ravens, 20, what it ended up being, 24 for the Titans, that's an outbreak. That's enough to move a game. So it is different. It is different in that sense to where you're talking about like a legitimate outbreak. And whereas this game, as bad as it might have been, and the most important position, which is at the quarterback, where you're having to play a guy who's, I mean, bless his heart, went out there. I don't know the dude's name. I didn't get a chance to see the game, but I do know that the Broncos lost and he had a tough time. But it's different with, a full-on outbreak and just one position group, even if it knocks out an entire position group. That's the difference, Dom. And I'm sure the Broncos are going to be pissed about it. I saw Vic Fangio's comments after the game. He was pissed about it. No outbreak with the Browns, says Justin M. Turner. Did I say the Browns? I didn't mean to. You'll get you fed time, says Shamari. I'm not sure if Shamari's talking to me or talking to somebody else. If the Titans shut the Browns' run game down, then Baker has shown that he can't beat teams with his arm. NFL is not about player safety, nor is about player safety, not player advantage. No, it's not about either of those things, Justin. It's about money. It's about money. That's it. It's about money. It's about television dollars. It's about marketing. It's about all of those things. It's not about player safety. It's not about player advantage. It's about money. It's the only reason we're playing football right now, which I'm grateful for, by the way, because otherwise I wouldn't be getting paid right now. Like 100%, I would not have a job if we did not have a football season right now. They would have no money to pay for me for A to Z Sports because we couldn't sell any advertising on all of the Titan stuff that we do, right? We couldn't have any endorsements. We couldn't have any partnerships, and they couldn't pay to send me to Indianapolis or Baltimore or, for me to cover the Tennessee Titans and do a daily streaming show because there'd be nothing to talk about, right? It's not about any of those things. It's literally just about the money. College football even more so, which I desperately wish college football wouldn't have played this year, but what's done is done, and they're greedy. They're more greedy than anybody. I bet you're sad your favorite team, Brownie Bulger says, I bet you're sad your favorite football team, the Colts, lost. No, actually, I talked about this on Twitter. I tweeted this before the game when I was on my way to Lucas Oil, because I think about this every time I come to Indianapolis since I graduated high school. And so I graduated high school in 2012, then I would have been a sophomore in 2010 and a junior. No, I'm sorry. I graduated high school in 2012. I would have been a sophomore football season in 2009. 2010 would have been my junior season. We played both of our high school football player. My high school football team was good in high school. We went to state my sophomore and junior year. That was the first 2 years that Lucas Oil was open. And so we played the state championships, the Indiana state championships at Lucas Oil Field, which was really cool, right? You get to, you change in the Colts locker room. You come out of the tunnel like Colts players do, yada, 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 on and on and on. It's a brand new stadium. It's a beautiful stadium. And Lucas Oil is a beautiful stadium. But I hate Lucas Oil Stadium because we got absolutely drilled both years by like teams it was like a college team playing a high school team, the way that we got our asses kicked. both years that I was up here to play in state championship games. For high school football, the Wrights Memorial High School Tigers. We had great times. It was a lot of fun. So we graduated the same year, man, class of 2012 in this effort. Damn 2012, says Shamari. What am I doing with my life? Yeah, so I hate Lucas Oil Stadium. Not just because of the press box and it makes my stomach turn every time I'm in that press box, and always because I'll be honest. Now that it's the end of the show, we can be honest because it's prime time. It's after dark. It's 9 o'clock your time, 10 o'clock here. I'm always not for this game. Actually, a little for this game because, I safely and socially distance. All my college buddies live up here. So, in a very distanced environment at my friend's house on his back patio, did a little tequila sipping last night. And so I'm always a little hung. And in normal year, it's much more than a little tequila sipping. So I'm always a little bit hungover, a little bit hurt coming into this game because, it's a little bit like a college reunion every time I come back here. And so I go to this press box, and this press box is like Mount Everest in terms of press boxes, and the vertigo kills me. And it's always when my stomach's upset because I've done bad things the night before. And then I come into this godforsaken press box, and a lot of times the Titans lose and everybody's miserable. And it's not like I care if the Titans win or lose, but my job is a lot easier when they win, decidedly more easier when they win. And so they're always miserable, and I'm always miserable. And I hate this place because my terrible high school memories happened on that field where how you are when your high school football seasons end. And maybe not everybody goes to the state championship. So we're very lucky in that regard. And to finish second place, not bad. But you're sobbing and all of these things, and it's a terrible experience, and nobody has any fun, and there's no parties afterwards, and you just get back on a team bus, and everybody's pouting and all of these things that happen over and over and over again. So yes, hate Lucas Oil Stadium, even though it's a beautiful stadium. It really is. What's up, Buck? Says Antonio. Good to see you, brother. Wait till you get a dad bod, says Tog. No. Oh, actually, I'll be honest with you. If I keep eating any more press box food, I will have a dad bod pretty soon. But what I will say to you is it will not be right now because it's the end of the show. And I might get something to eat because I'm not tired yet. It's 10 p.m. Eastern time here in Indianapolis. They do have a good breakfast buffet up there in the press box area, says Scott. Yes, they do. Now, not today. Well, actually, it's still a good spread today. Shout out, Andy. The Colts kill it when it comes to at least to everything but that godforsaken press box view. It kills me. Anyway, I'm going to get some food because I'm not tired yet. The show's over, but the work week has just begun. And it is going to be underway because the Tennessee Titans 8-3 will square off against the Cleveland Browns 8-3 in a week from today. And we will continue to give you the best coverage leading up to that game at AtoZSportsNashville.com because I'm not tired yet. We got podcasts to do. The primetime week has just begun, and I will be on the radio tomorrow, and we will be doing all of those things after a Mike Bravel press conference, after I haul my ass back to Nashville, Tennessee, my favorite place in the world, from the state of my youth, the state of my birth, Indiana. I will be back there, and we will be working hard for the people because I'm not tired yet. We will see you tomorrow night on these very same streaming. Oh, my graphic changed, and I did not mean for the graphic to change. Maybe I'm a little tired. There's the right graphic. And maybe I'm a little tired, but not quite yet because it's the end of the show. Peace and love, fam. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central Time. We'll see you then. Austin and Zach got you covered in the morning. I'm not tired yet. No!